I approached the crown prince to kill him. Not long after, the higher-ups asked, "What about the person we told you to kill?" I stood there with my swollen belly, disheveled by the wind, and said, "That's my husband. What are you talking about?" Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now the story begins. My name is Jiang Ji. I work for the third prince, and I infiltrated the crown prince's residence under the alias Tsuehua. Fortunately, I had good luck. Just 3 months after infiltrating the crown prince's residence, I became his personal maid. I carried the tea and slowly knelt down, placing it before him. "Your Highness, your tea." Rongyang didn't lift his eyes to look at me, but it didn't matter, he would sooner or later die by my blade. His slender, pale fingers picked up the teacup, taking a gentle sip, his gaze leisurely falling upon me, his handsome eyebrows slightly raised. "You're called Kuixiong." I lowered my head. "Your Highness, this servant is called Tsuehua. You do have a pretty face." Rongyang curled the corner of his lips, withdrew his gaze, set down the teacup, and said unhurriedly, "In 3 days, come to my chamber to serve me for the night." I hurried back to my room before I came to my senses. Serve him for the night? Am I really going to sacrifice myself just to kill him? The more I thought about it, the more it felt wrong, so I decided to quit and quickly wrote a letter to my superior. The reply I received was, "Dear, breaking the contract will cost you 500 taels of silver." Damn, 500 taels, I couldn't afford that even if I sold myself. The higher-ups don't care, as long as I can kill Rongyang, any method will do. Fine, then I'll take a gamble. On the night I serve him, I'll kill Rongyang in one move. That night, after the maids helped me wash and dress, they were about to take me to Rongyang's bedchamber. I hid a knife in my sleeve and carefully pushed the door open to enter. His bedchamber was very dark, with only a few dim yellow candlelights glowing. "Come in." Suddenly, Rongyang's deep voice sounded from not far away. I followed the sound and saw him sitting on the bed. I clenched the fist hidden in my sleeve and walked toward him, kneeling properly. "Your servant, Tsuehua, pays respects to your highness." Rongyang responded lazily. "Lift your head and look at me." I swallowed hard before slowly lifting my head, and what met my eyes was his peerless beauty. He looked at me and, for some reason, let out a light scoff. "Come here, serve me." I dawdled as I got up and walked toward him, but before I could get close, he grabbed my hand, pulled me into his embrace, then placed my hand on the sash at his waist. The corner of his lips lifted slightly as he pressed his mouth close to my ear and whispered, "Untie it." I pressed my lips together without speaking, but my face burned fiercely. "Are you called Tsueyu?" Rongyang suddenly asked. I frowned slightly. "Your Highness, this servant is Tsuehua. You asked 3 days ago. Only someone with 10 years of brain damage could ask such a question." "Oh," he responded with sudden realization, his intense gaze falling on my flushed cheeks. "Are you nervous?" My hand paused for a moment before quickly returning to normal. "Your Highness, this servant is not nervous, not nervous." I bit my lip and was about to draw the knife hidden in my sleeve, but before my hand could reach it, Rongyang gently grasped it and placed it on his waist. He hooked a strand of my hair with his fingertip and whispered, "Hurry up, it's too dark. I can't see clearly." As soon as I finished speaking, Rongyang suddenly pushed me away. He chuckled softly. "Look at you, still saying you're not nervous." I lowered my head and said nothing. "Forget it." He waved his hand and sighed. "You may withdraw." "Tsuelan." I was taken aback for a moment, then lowered my head and said, "Your Highness, this servant is called Tsuehua." "Understood." Lanhua. After that day, Rongyang still ordered me around as if nothing had happened, and I was thinking of other ways to kill him. Originally, it wasn't a big deal for the crown prince to summon someone to his bedchamber, but I had only just entered when I left shortly after. From then on, rumors spread throughout the palace, saying the crown prince was a 3-second man. At the moment, I was brewing tea for Rongyang. A maid leaned in and whispered, "Tsuehua, is the crown prince really that fast?" I glanced at her sideways and walked out with the tea. "How should I know?" She caught up in 2 steps. "How could you not know?" I didn't really want to bother with these unimportant people. "Leave me alone. Just tell me. I'll only ask this, is it really the crown prince or not?" "Nothing happened between me and the crown prince." She raised an eyebrow at me. "Then I understand. The crown prince must be. If that's what you think, I can't help it." I didn't say anything more, carrying the tea into the study. "Your Highness." Rongyang was holding a pen with his head lowered, writing something. I placed the tea in front of him. "Chrysanthemum, next month is Father Emperor's birthday banquet. Prepare well." "Me, after all sorts of flower names, I've gained a new one." "Chrysanthemum, I think it's your damn mother who should be called chrysanthemum. Want me to give you a taste of what a real chrysanthemum feels like? I lowered my gaze, too weary to argue with him any further, and forced a faint smile at the corner of my lips. What does your highness need this servant to prepare? Prepare a dance. I gave an awkward smile. This servant only knows how to serve tea and water. Rongyang glanced at me lightly, then learn. I'm just not cut out for this by nature. I declined. Your highness, perhaps you should find someone else. Rongyang merely curled his lips indifferently. If you can't learn, I'll sell you to the pleasure house. Hearing this, I shook my head repeatedly. Your highness, please don't. Being sold to the pleasure house wouldn't be a big deal, but I went through so much trouble to sneak in and get close to him. I can't just be driven out like this. Then study well. I will try my best. Rongyang found someone to teach me how to dance. I already had some martial arts foundation, so my waist was flexible, and practicing wasn't too difficult, but to avoid revealing any flaws, I pretended to be a bit clumsy. It wasn't until a month later that I finally mastered this melody in the clouds. At the emperor's banquet, veiled in purple gauze, I danced the piece Rongyang had commanded me to prepare for the emperor's birthday. The music ceased, and the dance concluded. Kneeling in the center of the grand hall, I lowered my head and said, "This humble servant has embarrassed herself." The emperor laughed heartily and looked at Rongyang. "The crown prince is truly thoughtful." Rongyang still wore a faint smile and said respectfully, "As long as your majesty is pleased." The emperor's gaze then fell upon me. "Why not remove your veil?" Hearing this, I clenched my palm slightly but still took off the veil. "Oh, I never expected the crown prince's palace to hide such a delicate beauty." A voice suddenly rang out in the grand hall, though it was unclear which prince had spoken. "Fifth brother." "You jest," Rongyang replied. The fifth prince gave an awkward smile. "I wonder if the crown prince would be willing to bestow this delicate beauty upon me." Rongyang glanced toward me, kneeling in the center of the hall. "Oh," I lowered my head, not knowing what expression Rongyang had. So it was the fifth prince. Damn it, I couldn't be taken away. The penalty for breaking the contract was 500 taels of silver. I cleared my throat and quickly said, "Your highness, in life I am the crown prince's servant, and in death I will be his ghost." The fifth prince flicked his sleeve. "What if I insist?" His words left me speechless. "I am the crown prince's servant. I will not leave his side." As soon as I finished speaking, Rongyang's light laughter came from the other side. "She will soon become my consort. I'm afraid she cannot fulfill the fifth brother's wish." I was completely stunned and instinctively turned to look at Rongyang, only to meet his smiling eyes. A concubine. Half a quarter of an hour later, I finally stepped back and left the main hall. The cold wind brushed against my face, and I sobered up a little. I've only been in the palace for 3 months. How did I become a consort? To be honest, getting promoted here is much faster than being under the third prince. As I walked into a dark corner, someone suddenly pulled me aside. Looking up, it was someone from the third prince. "Big brother, what's the plan next?" I asked. "The closer we get to the crown prince, the better chance we have to kill him. But what if the crown prince really asks me to serve him in bed? Last time I was lucky. And since I was just a maid, Rongyang didn't touch me. But if I really become his concubine in the future, I'll have to openly serve him in bed." The man lazily turned around. "I don't care about that. As long as you can kill the crown prince, I'll pay any amount of silver you ask for." Hearing movement not far away, I quickly stepped outside, pretending as if nothing had happened. A few days later, I truly became the crown prince's concubine, without a primary consort. He had taken a concubine first. I went from a small maid to a crown prince's consort. My status suddenly elevated significantly. Since I wasn't from a noble family, his actions sparked quite a bit of gossip, with people saying he had lost his mind over a woman. But I didn't care about these voices. All I wanted was to kill Rongyang. Since I had become his consort, I was one step closer to him. Why not just poison him? Just as I was lost in thought, a voice suddenly sounded beside me. "Miss Tsuehua. His Highness the Crown Prince has arrived." I was taken aback for a moment, and as I looked up, I saw Rongyang walking in. I quickly lowered my head and called out respectfully, "Your Highness the Crown Prince." Rongyang's indifferent gaze lingered on me for only a moment before he looked away. Finding a seat and sitting down, "Come sit beside me." "Yes." I pressed my lips together and went over. "What is he trying to do?" The maid beside me stepped forward and dutifully poured him a cup of tea. I forced a slight smile at him. "Your Highness, is there something you need here?" Rongyang curled the corner of his lips and said indifferently, "Naturally, it's because I missed you and came to see you." He raised an eyebrow. "What? You don't like it when I come to see you?" I choked for a moment before replying. I like it. Why does Rong Yang keep spouting such flirtatious words? You must have been in contact with quite a few women, haven't you? Rong Yang didn't speak further. He picked up the teacup, brought it to his lips, paused for a moment, but didn't drink. Someone, come here. As soon as he finished speaking, 2 guards entered from outside the door. He indifferently set down the teacup and slowly turned his gaze to the maid standing nearby. Seize her. The 2 guards responded by restraining the maid. Your Highness, how should we deal with her? The maid looked at him in panic. Your Highness, you, then. Rong Yang glanced at her expressionlessly. Kill her. Upon hearing this, the maid was nearly scared to tears. Your Highness, why would you want to kill me? Rong Yang patiently picked up the teacup and casually threw it to the ground. Bang! The teacup instantly shattered into several pieces, spilling tea all over the floor, which foamed up. What do you think? I looked at the broken teacup on the ground, my eyes darkening. She had poisoned the tea. Your Highness, spare me. Your Highness, I was only doing this for the money. Please let me go. Without another word, the 2 guards dragged the maid away. Her screams from the room gradually faded until they disappeared entirely. Indeed, Rong Yang is highly suspicious. Even poisoning wouldn't work. If I had really poisoned him today, wouldn't I be the one being taken away? Scared, a voice suddenly sounded by my ear. I turned to look and saw it was Rong Yang. His dark eyes held a trace of amusement as he slowly leaned a bit closer to me. If someone harbors ill intentions and wants to kill me, and I find out about it, that will be their fate, or perhaps, even worse than death, then wouldn't my life be in danger? I suppressed the urge to curse, forcing a slight smile. Your Highness is wise and mighty. Who could possibly harm you? Compared to silver, I value my life more. He chuckled softly. I'll take that as your blessing. I had thought Rong Yang would stay tonight, but after he finished speaking, he left as if nothing had happened. So that very night, under the cover of darkness, I went to find the 3rd prince's men. When I arrived, they were playing mahjong, but there were only 3 of them. I put on a pained expression. Brothers, can I just quit? Rong Yang kills without even blinking. If I get caught, 2 of dots. One of them threw down a tile before glancing at me. Bring the penalty fee. Talking about money hurts feelings. This is a matter of life and death for me. Haha, out of moves. The man chuckled, pushing his tiles forward. I win. I was getting impatient, but I still asked patiently, are you even listening to me? The man pocketed the silver, wiggled his eyebrows at me, and said, 3 players short of a full table. Little sister, care to join? Seeing my hesitation, he clicked his tongue. TSK, look at you, getting worked up won't help. Sit down. Play some mahjong, and us brothers will help you figure something out. Hearing this, my eyes lit up. You'll help me figure something out. Many hands make light work. I think that makes some sense. I sighed and sat down anyway. What do you suggest? I know, let the dogs bite him. One of them said casually. Even the dogs would run away at the sight of him. I ended up staying the whole night. Playing mahjong was one thing, but I did come up with some ideas, though they were all terrible ones. By the time I sneaked back into the palace with 2 big dark circles under my eyes, the sky was already turning pale with the first light of dawn. The moment I touched the bed, I fell asleep. I slept until almost the afternoon. My maid told me that Rong Yang had taken in several concubines. Took a concubine. At this moment, I was sprawled out on the bed, drowsily closing my eyes, and couldn't help but sigh. Well done. Young people really have such strong bodies. Let His Highness the Crown Prince replenish himself more, so he doesn't overexert himself. The maid frowned and stepped forward. Miss, if the Crown Prince takes a concubine, won't he forget about you? How can you say it's good? Naturally. I couldn't tell her that I didn't care whether Rong Yang liked me or not, so I casually brushed it off. Not good, not good. A few more uneventful days passed, and Rong Yang never came to see me again. It seems I've fallen out of favor. No, I was never favored in the first place. I was getting a little anxious. Because I was out of favor, I had no chance to get close to Rong Yang. If I couldn't get close to him, how could I kill him? But how to win favor, after a long time with no ideas? I found 100 ways to win favor. Who will I favor if not you? After reading it, I felt like my whole being had been elevated. Master, I have attained enlightenment. The next day, I had hidden early in the courtyard that Rong Yang would pass through on his way to the study, climbed up a tree, and pretended to fall while trying to reach a bird's nest. Rong Yang would surely catch me when he saw this, and then I would flash my carefully prepared smile, certain to captivate him completely. At this moment, I was standing on the tree, hearing footsteps approaching from not far away, and I began to shake the branches, After a startled cry, I fell straight down. Just as I was about to hit the ground, a hand suddenly wrapped around my waist, catching me steadily. I turned back with a smile, only to see an unfamiliar face. That person was also stunned, and as their grip loosened, I landed on my bottom and fell to the ground. Second brother, isn't this the dancer from the banquet the other day, your concubine, A deep voice followed shortly after. I didn't get a good look from afar that day, but seeing her up close today, she's truly stunningly beautiful. With my high martial arts skills, a fall like this was nothing. But thinking I had to play the delicate woman in front of them, I let out a few sobbing whimpers. It hurts. The man who had just picked me up hurried over in a panic. I didn't mean to. I instinctively looked up and saw it was the seventh prince. Indeed, the seventh prince and the crown prince had always been on good terms, so his presence here was not surprising. But why hadn't Rong Yang come to pick me up earlier? I was lost in thought when Rong Yang suddenly walked over to me, a faint smile on his face. I brushed aside my somewhat messy hair, got up, and gritted my teeth as I called out, "Your Highness the Crown Prince, it's only been a few days since we last met. How did you end up in such a state?" "I accidentally fell from a tree." "Oh," Rong Yang raised an eyebrow and responded, "I thought you were trying to get my attention." I almost choked on his words. Did he steal my script? How does he know everything? After a long pause, I cautiously looked up and said, "Your Highness, do I still have a chance?" Rong Yang glanced at me lightly before averting his gaze. "If you wish to see me, you could have just said so. Whatever you desire, I will grant it." He particularly emphasized the word grant. I gave an awkward smile. "Well, Your Highness is too kind to me. I feel embarrassed." Is Rong Yang the reincarnation of the king of flirtatious talk? But he has been treating me quite well these days, except that I can't see him. Prince Rong Chi, standing nearby, was slightly surprised. "Second brother, you wouldn't have taken a liking to her, would you?" Rong Yang's gaze fell on me again, studying me carefully for a moment before he softly responded. Why? Rong Yang glanced at me casually. "A fine appearance, I like it." I looked up and saw Rong Yang staring at me, but not at my face. Following his gaze, my eyes eventually landed on my chest, realizing it was a bit small, so I subtly straightened my posture. The seventh prince over there suddenly clicked his tongue and looked me up and down. "Second brother, this isn't quite up to par. What nonsense are you talking? I'll scatter your ashes to the wind within 3 days. Rong Yang's gaze was fixed intently on me, not even glancing at him, and he said lightly, "I prefer those I've raised myself." I slowly looked up, my face a picture of astonishment. "You're so flirtatious." By nightfall, after dinner, the maid told me that Rong Yang wanted me to go to his room. Hearing this, I was delighted and, humming a tune, I went to his room with my little dagger. I pushed open the tightly closed door and walked in. Several lamps were lit inside, making it very bright. As soon as I entered, I saw Rong Yang sitting at the table. I bowed slightly to him and called out, "Your Highness." Hearing my voice, Rong Yang looked up at me and pointed to the tea beside him. "This tea has gone cold. Bring me a fresh cup." "Understood." I walked over, picked up the teacup by his hand, and was about to leave when a loud crash suddenly rang out. Following the sound, I saw a group of black-clad men kicking the door open and rushing in with swords in hand. "Kill!" Several men shouted and charged forward without another word. I threw the tea in my hand at them in one swift motion. These small-time thugs couldn't have hurt me originally, but to avoid arousing Rong Yang's suspicion, I quickly ran behind him. "Your Highness, your humble servant is afraid." Rong Yang frowned and pulled me out from behind him. "I'm afraid too." Just as I was bewildered, an assassin charged at me. The blade pointed straight at me. I must not reveal that I know martial arts. But shouldn't these people be trying to kill Rong Yang? I clenched my fist but ultimately did not dodge. A sharp, intense pain shot through my shoulder, and I furrowed my brows tightly. The next moment, a group of guards rushed in, surrounded the assassin, and apprehended him. Afterward, Rong Yang summoned the imperial physician to tend to the wound. Now, lying weakly on the bed, I listened as the guards reported on the condition of the assassins from earlier. The pain is real. And the ordeal is truly exhausting. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, we've found out. The assassin who just came was sent by the third prince." Rong Yang had his back to me, and I couldn't see his expression, but my heart was a turmoil of mixed emotions. The assassin's sword was pointed directly at me. If he was truly sent by the third prince, how could he not recognize me? "Understood." Rong Yang's voice was indifferent, not sounding the least bit surprised. "You may leave." "Understood." After the guard withdrew, only the two of us remained in the room. Rong Yang turned and walked toward me. I opened my eyes and met his smiling gaze. Instinctively shrinking back, he stopped at the bedside, looked at me for a few seconds, and asked, "Does it hurt?" "It hurts," I thought. Isn't that a stupid question? Rong Yang was silent for a few seconds, then suddenly raised an eyebrow and asked, "Did you hear everything the guard said just now?" I nodded. I heard. Wasn't the third prince the one who hired me to kill Rong Yang? Why is he sending people after me now? He looked at me, suddenly let out a light laugh, raised an eyebrow, and asked, "The fact that the assassin is the third prince's man, do you think I should tell the emperor?" I didn't rush to answer. An assassin entering the palace would surely be known to the emperor, but the fact that the assassin was sent by the third prince, naturally, I did not wish the emperor to discover. I pursed my lips, forcing a reluctant smile as I replied, "I don't understand such matters and cannot assist your highness." Rong Yang was in no hurry. He leisurely leaned down, his smiling eyes fixed intently on my face, a hint of casual amusement flickering in their depths. "You choose. I'll follow your decision." His smile seemed harmless, but as I looked at it, a chill ran down my spine. "Chrysanthemum, be good and choose quickly." His tone was very patient. "You're the chrysanthemum." I took a deep breath and still said, "I don't know." He looked at me deeply, then straightened up. "No rush. I have plenty of patience." Rong Yang finished speaking, then turned and strode out. It wasn't until his figure disappeared from my sight that I gradually came back to my senses. Indeed, the third prince wanted to kill the crown prince simply to take his position, but Rong Yang, who had firmly held the crown prince's seat, was no easy target either. But why would the assassin sent by the third prince harm me? If the sword had been a few inches lower, the injury would have been much more severe. The next day, thinking my wound had improved, I took advantage of the darkness to slip out of the palace and found the third prince's men. A few of them were drinking and enjoying themselves. These men were hired by the third prince's subordinates. The third prince had told me to seek them out if anything came up. They were naturally lazy, and with their supervisor absent, they were even less disciplined than the people in the third prince's palace. I stepped forward and asked with some displeasure, "Hey Suan, what was the deal with the assassin from the palace a few days ago?" "Oh, that one." The man tossed a peanut into his mouth and took a sip of wine before saying, "Naturally. He was there to assassinate Rong Yang." Seeing his indifferent attitude, I grew even more annoyed. "But his sword was pointed at me. I didn't see any intention to kill Rong Yang. It was just a joke with you. That's all." "What do you mean? You've been by Rong Yang's side for so long, and not a single hair on his head has been harmed. What use are you?" I laughed in anger. "So, you sent someone to kill me?" He curled the corner of his lips. "Consider it a lesson. Kill Rong Yang sooner. And you can take the silver and run away. Isn't that right?" Hearing this, I couldn't hold back my anger. Clenching my fist, I raised my hand and punched him in the face. My punch was quite powerful, and he was completely unprepared, almost knocked to the ground by me. The people around immediately slammed the table and stood up. "What are you doing? I'll give you a lesson too." I coldly dropped this sentence and turned to leave. I sneaked back to the palace only to find that the wound had split open again, probably because I had used too much force just now. But late at night, I didn't want to trouble the imperial physician again, nor did I want others to ask about the reopened wound. I found the medicine, pulled down half of my clothes, and clumsily applied it to myself. Just as I had applied a little, the door was suddenly pushed open. Before I could even put my clothes back on, I looked up and saw it was Rong Yang. I was slightly taken aback but still calmly said, Your Highness the Crown Prince." Rong Yang walked over to me, reached out to take the medicine from my hand, and asked leisurely, "What's the matter? Weren't you feeling better yesterday? How did the wound reopen?" I tugged my clothes up a bit and casually made up an excuse. "Your Highness, it was an accident on my part. Don't bother covering up. With a figure like yours, I have no interest in looking." What a ridiculous situation. I shot him an annoyed glance and said helplessly, "Your Highness, let me do it myself." Just as I reached out to take it, Rong Yang raised an eyebrow and moved it out of my reach. Playing hard to get, he asked, "Are you out of your mind?" Rong Yang noticed I had fallen silent again, a faint smile playing at the corners of his lips. "I happen to like this kind of act. I really have nothing to say." He pulled out a small medicine bottle from somewhere, and upon opening it, it contained a milky white ointment. "Use this, it won't leave a scar in the future." After saying this, without waiting for me to refuse, he sat down beside me and applied the medicine. I watched his skilled movements, pursing my lips without moving or speaking. Rong Yang lowered his gaze as he applied the medicine to me and suddenly asked, "How have you considered the matter I asked you about last time?" I didn't rush to speak. After what happened tonight, It would be a lie to say I wasn't chilled to the bone. This time I was lucky, the assassin didn't strike a vital spot. But what about next time? Who can say for sure? I truly never expected they would want to kill me. But if the third prince is exposed, and Rongyang finds out my identity, I won't have a chance to survive either. Now I'm truly caught in a dilemma. Rongyang waited for a while and, seeing that I remained silent, asked, "Why aren't you saying anything?" I lowered my gaze slightly. "Your Highness may decide as you see fit." He seemed to have thought of something, suddenly let out a light scoff, and then replied, "Then I'll play along with him a little longer." I turned to look at him, my heart filled with mixed emotions. His tone was very casual, as if a matter of life and death was as insignificant as a sesame seed in his words. Rongyang finished applying the medicine, pulled my clothes back up, placed the ointment aside, and then took off his outermost garment. I watched as he took off his clothes and was stunned for a moment. "Your Highness, you, move over." Seeing that I remained motionless, he narrowed his beautiful eyes. "What, do you need me to help you?" Hearing this, I pouted and reluctantly moved over. No sooner had I moved aside than he lay down. Instinctively, I hugged my fragile self and whispered, "Your Highness, my injuries haven't fully healed yet. Isn't this a bit too beastly of you?" He glanced at me lazily, a playful smile dancing in his brow. I hadn't planned on doing anything, but now it seems if I don't do something, I'd be letting down your beastly remark. I choked on my words and quickly lay down. I didn't say anything. Rongyang said nothing more, and soon, the sound of even breathing could be heard. I turned my head and saw him lying still with his eyes closed, so I reached out to check his breathing. It seemed Rongyang had fallen asleep, a perfect opportunity. I drew the dagger I always carried with me from my chest, injured. My movements were somewhat sluggish. I carefully aimed the blade at his body beneath the quilt. With just a bit of force, he would meet a gruesome end. I held this dagger until my palm was sweaty, yet I couldn't bring myself to do it. Why am I hesitating? If I kill Rongyang, I can take the silver and run, but if they can harm me today for not killing Rongyang, they can also silence me tomorrow after I kill him. Either way, it's a dead end. After a moment of hesitation, I still withdrew my hand. There will be plenty of days ahead to kill him. I'll spare his life for a few more days and go ask the third prince about it tomorrow. I slept peacefully with Rongyang through the night. I've always woken up early, so I waited until he awoke and left before getting up myself. Afterward, I received a letter from the third prince, summoning me to his residence. I wasn't sure if he was the one who had ordered the assassin that day. After all, I was just a small, expendable pawn. Even if the third prince's men had me killed first and reported later, claiming I was useless, he wouldn't be held accountable, so I tidied myself up, thought it over, changed into some inconspicuous clothes, and quietly made my way to the third prince's residence. When I saw the third prince, he was in his study. "Your Highness," I called out. He looked up and saw it was me, his gaze faltering slightly. "You're here." Rongxi averted his eyes. "Jiangxi, I've given you so much time. Why is Rongyang still not dead?" I clenched my palm, keeping my head bowed low. "Your Highness, this matter cannot be rushed. How much time have I given you?" I bit my lip. "Your Highness, you know how meticulous Rongyang is." Rongxi let out a cold laugh. "I don't want to hear these excuses. If you can't kill him, what use are you to me?" Hearing this, I fell silent for a long moment before I couldn't help but ask, "What about the assassin from a few days ago?" That was me, growing impatient, sending someone to kill Rongyang. But why did they injure me? He paused slightly. Perhaps they accidentally hurt the wrong person. Hearing these words, my heart turned completely cold. Those assassins were all specially trained, so it was naturally impossible for them to have injured the wrong person. I might have reluctantly believed him if he said the man was blind. Therefore, those people injured me with the third prince's tacit approval. In their eyes, my life is nothing but dust, dispensable and insignificant. I looked up at Rongxi and couldn't help but sneer. If it weren't for the 500 taels penalty for breach of contract, I would have run away long ago, letting them play their games at their own pace. "Those useless fools who hurt you, I'll send someone to kill them tomorrow." Seeing that I remained silent, Rongxi paused for a moment before speaking again, as if to console me. "Think about it. The sooner Rongyang is dead, the sooner you'll get your silver, right?" I lowered my head again, my heart chillingly cold, and replied expressionlessly, "Yes." I returned to the palace soon after. Though it was already nearly noon, I pretended to have just woken up and changed into fresh clothes. Hearing from the maid that Rongyang hadn't returned from court yet, I breathed a sigh of relief. Things have come to this point, and I'm like a headless fly, unable to find my way. I no longer want to do this job. Who knows, if I kill Rong Yang, they might send someone to silence me the very next day. But where can I get 500 taels of silver? I was lost in thought when the maid came in carrying a bowl of something, saying, "Concubine, this is pumpkin porridge made by order of the Crown Prince." She placed the porridge in front of me, a smile on her face. All the ladies in the various courtyards have some. All the ladies in the various courtyards have some. Hearing that Rong Yang had also sent porridge to the concubine he had taken in, I felt at ease and drank the porridge. After returning from the third prince's place, I suddenly felt a sense of relief that I hadn't made a move against Rong Yang last night. Whether he likes me or not, he treats me better than those in power. Killing won't work, and running away directly isn't an option either. I don't want to spend my life being hunted. That said, paying the penalty fee seems to be the most suitable solution. 500 taels, who can lend it to me? At that moment, the tightly shut door was suddenly pushed open. I looked up and saw it was Rong Yang, who had just returned from court. I stared at him, momentarily stunned. Far away yet right before my eyes, I could ask Rong Yang for help. Rong Yang certainly wasn't short on silver. After serving him all these days, if he had any conscience at all, borrowing a bit of silver from him shouldn't be a problem, right? "Are you staring at me in a daze?" Rong Yang said, then suddenly smiled. "What, have you missed me after just a few hours apart? You're still the boldest." The maids in the room suddenly all withdrew. I cleared my throat and asked, "Your Highness, could you lend me some silver?" "How much?" 500 taels. After hearing this, Rong Yang curled his lips, asking for so much. "Could it be that you've been keeping a young lover behind my back?" I quickly denied it. I wouldn't dare. If I could afford a kept man, would I still be stuck here as a lowly assassin? He glanced at me casually. "So, little chrysanthemum, what do you need the silver for?" "My family has run into some trouble. I urgently need a large sum of silver." I dropped to my knees with a thud, quick as a flash. "Your Highness, please consider how long I have served you and lend it to me." "Trouble at home, you say?" Rong Yang raised an eyebrow slightly. "This silver, I doubt you can repay it. Lending it to you for nothing would be a loss for me, wouldn't it?" "Then, what does your Highness mean?" "Serve me well, and perhaps if I'm pleased, I'll give it to you." Rong Yang slowly leaned down, looking at me with lowered eyes, and said word by word, "Right now." I suddenly swallowed my saliva. I really can't understand him more and more. Rong Yang wanting me to serve him in bed is just a matter of a word. Just like last time, there's no need to go to such great lengths. I wanted to ask him, but I was afraid that if I asked, he might change his mind and not do it. Of course, I was unwilling. But now I had no choice but to agree. If I stayed here, this day would come sooner or later, and the slightest misstep could cost me my life. How difficult this is for me. Why isn't little chrysanthemum saying anything? Little chrysanthemum. I looked at his face and always felt like he was tricking me. I pursed my lips and replied, "You're not lying to me, are you? A gentleman's word is as good as his bond." I gritted my teeth and said, "All right then." The moment my words fell, I thought I saw Rong Yang curl the corners of his lips, but it was only for a very brief moment. Then, I felt a sudden lightness as he scooped me up and carried me toward the bed. Rong Yang placed me on the soft couch, looking down at me. Then, he drew out the last syllable, "Kiss me first." I've lived over 20 years without even touching a man's hand. Kiss my foot. But when I thought of my silver and the wonderful life I would have after gaining my freedom, I closed my eyes, gritted my teeth, and leaned in to give him a kiss. Rong Yang curled the corner of his lips, his exceptionally handsome eyes brimming with laughter. "Little chrysanthemum, that doesn't count as a kiss." Why is he calling me chrysanthemum again? I decided to emphasize my name once more. Even though it was an alias, "Your Highness, my name isn't chrysanthemum, it's Tsuehua, Kui as in emerald green, Hua as in flower. I just love calling you chrysanthemum. Did your mother forget to bring you to the grave, because you're being absurd?" I was speechless for a moment and didn't want to argue with him about this anymore. So I asked, "Then what is a kiss? If you don't understand, just ask." "That's what the book says." Rong Yang didn't speak. He lowered his head and kissed me, unhurriedly pressing against my lips, gently prying open my teeth. I frowned uncomfortably, instinctively clenching my hand, only to realize my palm was drenched in sweat. I'd never done this kind of thing before. It wasn't until I could barely breathe that the long, damp kiss finally ended. I suddenly felt a bit of regret, almost thinking he was trying to suffocate me. "This is what you call a kiss, understand, little chrysanthemum." I bit my lip, feeling nothing but embarrassment. And it took me a while to catch my breath. Your Highness, this silver, I could borrow it from someone else too, so, all my efforts in teaching you were in vain." Rong Yang had no intention of letting me off, suddenly giving a faint smile. Besides me, who else would give you this sum of silver? Upon second thought, it really was the case. I stared intently at his face and whispered, then, is it still not too late to regret now? Rong Yang didn't answer me. This princess will now inspect the results. Inspect what? Before I could finish my words, he sealed my lips with a kiss. By the afternoon, I was so exhausted I felt half dead. Watching Rong Yang leisurely putting on his clothes, I gritted my teeth and asked, Your Highness, where's my silver? He straightened his clothes and said, Oh, I'm a bit short on silver lately. I'll pay you in installments. As the crown prince of a nation, how could he not have 500 taels of silver? And he wants to pay me in installments. Though I was seething, I still asked cautiously, how many issues? He finished dressing, as if nothing had happened, a faint smile gracing his handsome face. 1 issue a month, 500 issues. I was tricked, and tricked badly. But that didn't stop me from downing 3 big bowls of rice at dinner. If I really wait for Rong Yang to give me the silver, won't I have to wait 4 or 5 years? By that time, the grass on my grave might already be as tall as a half-grown child. I'm truly miserable, no doubt about it. After finishing dinner, I spent some time in the courtyard enjoying the breeze, and my muddled head finally cleared a bit. However, I didn't want to see that fellow Rong Yang, and I wasn't feeling too well. So I went to bed early. I was extremely tired and closed my eyes as soon as I got into bed. Just as I was about to fall asleep, I was suddenly pulled into a warm embrace. Instinctively, I looked up. It was Rong Yang. Still dare to come? I frowned, reached out to push him, but couldn't move him, so I simply gave in. Your Highness, my humble abode is too small to accommodate someone of your stature. You'd better find someone else. Rong Yang looked down at me, his tone full of amusement. Why is little Chrysanthemum so angry? I was furious and said through gritted teeth, because I was deceived. Rong Yang certainly knew I was referring to him, but he wasn't annoyed. I didn't deceive you. If there's any urgent matter at your home, I can temporarily give you more silver. I had forgotten if you hadn't mentioned it. That was the excuse I just used. How much? Depends on your performance. What was I even expecting? I didn't say anything more, turning away from him in displeasure, my back facing him. What happened at your home, little Chrysanthemum? Rong Yang asked with considerable patience. I made it up. How would I know what happened? I pursed my lips and casually fabricated a reason similar to my situation. This humble one has an elder sister who accidentally went to a place she shouldn't have and needs silver to redeem her. He only smiled carelessly. Since it requires 500 taels, her appearance must be no less than little Chrysanthemum's, right? Rong Yang's train of thought is always so peculiar, leaving me utterly baffled. You old pervert, caught red-handed, aren't you? Yes, I could only admit. But unfortunately, His Highness didn't give me any silver, so I couldn't redeem her. Where is she? I'll go personally to redeem your sister. Hearing this, I finally turned to look at him and quickly said, That won't be necessary, Your Highness, just give me the silver. Rong Yang merely raised an eyebrow and didn't press further on the matter. After a pause, he added indifferently, In a few days, the princes will be gathering in the palace for a small gathering. Since there is no crown princess in my palace, by then, it will all be up to you, little Chrysanthemum, to make the arrangements. Indeed, the crown prince has no principal consort, so these trivial matters that require decisions can only be handled by me, the secondary consort. His Majesty is not present, it's just a small gathering, so don't trouble yourself too much, Rong Yang said lightly. Then, with a smile, he added, Otherwise, I'll feel sorry for you. I twitched the corner of my mouth but still replied obediently, Yes, if he truly cared about me, I should be out clubbing right now. Rest. After hearing him speak, I was slightly taken aback. Your Highness, aren't you going back? Oh, I must accompany you, little Chrysanthemum. The next day, early in the morning, I received a letter secretly delivered by the third prince's men. The third prince ordered me to assassinate Rong Yang at the small banquet a few days later. With the crowd gathered that day, once the crown prince is attacked and chaos ensues, no one will notice that it was my doing. Indeed, this small banquet was arranged by me, making the preparations much more convenient. Although I didn't want to agree, I didn't have 500 taels of silver. So I had no choice but to reluctantly accept. After I secretly destroyed the letter, a maid came to report that Rong Yang's concubines were coming to pay their respects to me. I found it quite strange, since I am not the principal consort, and they didn't come to pay their respects when they first entered the household. Showing up now surely means no good. At the moment, I am troubled by the small banquet that will take place in a few days. Sister, How has your health been lately? As soon as she finished asking, another chimed in, yes, sister, the weather has changed, so you should add more layers to your clothing. The two of them took turns expressing their concern for me, while only one person sat quietly to the side. To be honest, the concubines he married are all quite good-looking. I yawned. Got it. Little sister. The woman who had been silent all along suddenly smiled faintly and called out, sister. I turned my gaze toward her. If sister is busy. For the small banquet in 3 days, we sisters can help you plan and offer suggestions. I wasn't very keen on agreeing with more people. It would be harder for me to make arrangements. Just as I was about to refuse, the woman spoke up first. His Highness has already given his permission. Forget it. I'll just be more discreet then. So I asked, what's your name? You. In the following days, I began preparing for the small banquet, among Rong Yang's 3 concubines. Only the one named Yu could be of some help, while the other 2 were idle and lazy, spending their days dressing up elaborately, hoping that Rong Yang would visit them. I hadn't paid much attention before, but these past few days, I really haven't seen Rong Yang go to them. But whether he visits them or not has little to do with me. In the coming days, the various princes will attend a small banquet, and as the crown prince's consort, I will naturally be by Rong Yang's side to serve. So my plan is to drug the tea of the other princes. Once they faint, the scene will surely descend into chaos, and in the confusion, I can seize the opportunity to kill Rong Yang. That night, the weather was a bit chilly. Having mostly finished my arrangements, I stretched lazily and prepared to return to my room to sleep. I pushed the door open and entered. Rong Yang was sitting on the bed, and upon hearing the sound of the door, he slowly turned his gaze toward me. Why are you only coming back now? Seeing him, I couldn't help but twitch the corner of my lips in slight helplessness. Lowering my head, I replied, I had to make arrangements for the small banquet in a few days. This guy really knows how to make things difficult for people. He pulled me into his arms, frowning. Didn't I send people to help you? Are those few all useless? I'm not one to complain, always thinking it's better to avoid trouble. This is my first time handling such matters. So I need to put in more effort to avoid embarrassing your highness. Don't overwork yourself, it pains my heart. I no longer know which of Rong Yang's words are true and which are false, so I just take them as jokes. Understood. I yawned, broke free from him, and climbed onto the bed. Your highness, please do as you wish. I'm so tired I'm about to meet the Duke of Ju in my dreams. As soon as I lay down, he pulled me into his embrace and whispered my name, Little Chrysanthemum. I closed my eyes and lazily responded, Do you think I treat you well? He suddenly asked. I didn't think much of it. Yes, dare I say no? Rong Yang let out a light scoff and said in a deep voice, if I were to die one day, would you be sad? After listening to him, my heart suddenly trembled for some unknown reason, and all my sleepiness vanished instantly. The people above don't do anything humane at all. I want to quit, but they won't let me go. I have no choice. If Rong Yang gives me those 500 taels, and I give them to those people, I can escape and his affairs will no longer concern me. But he didn't give them to me. Now I'm caught between a rock and a hard place, with no other options. I must kill him. Little Chrysanthemum, speak. Rong Yang's voice sounded very gentle and patient. I smiled. Your highness is blessed with good fortune. Who could possibly harm you? That's not what I want to hear. Rong Yang reached out to play with my hair. What I'm asking is, would you be sad? I choked for a moment. Of course I would be sad. Ridiculous. How dare I say I'm not sad? Rong Yang lifted the corner of his lips. Rest now. Oh, I responded. As for whether I would be sad or not, I don't know. The day of the small banquet arrived quickly. I rose early, and the princes arrived one after another. The third prince, Rong Shi, was also present. Everything was proceeding so smoothly. At that moment, I stood beside Rong Yang, watching the maids serve the drugged tea to the princes except for the third prince's cup, which contained no drug. I held the tea and placed it before Rong Yang. Your highness, please enjoy. He responded lightly and took a sip. When they faint and chaos erupts on the scene, I will make my move. Rong Yang noticed my daze, set down the tea, and reached out to hold my hand. Why so nervous? With me here, no one dares to blame you. There's no need to be anxious. If his hand moved just a little higher, he would feel the small dagger hidden in my sleeve. I swallowed hard, feeling a bit lucky. Understood. There's a sedative in this tea. Don't drink it, everyone. I was lost in thought when I suddenly heard someone shout this. I looked up. It was you. A sedative. What did you say? There's a sedative in this tea. You nodded, looked at me, and raised her voice. The sedative was put in by the consort. I saw it with my own eyes. There's no mistake. I was stunned for a moment. I was very careful when I put in the drug. Not even a fly could have gotten in. It's impossible that anyone saw me. You curled her lips into a smile. I suppose she must have wanted to take advantage of the chaos to do something. I pressed my lips together without speaking. And when I turned my gaze to the third prince, I saw him watching the scene with a relaxed expression, showing no concern at all that the plan had gone awry. My heart suddenly sank to the bottom. Only the third prince knew about my plan, and now that you had revealed most of it, it couldn't be a coincidence. I could think of no other reason than that the third prince had told her. They drank the potion. And I would have acted, but why did the third prince betray me? I was thrown into prison by the direct order of the third prince, charged with plotting to harm a prince, a crime punishable by death. As Rongyang's concubine, he said nothing, not even a glance in my direction. Perhaps silently accepting the third prince's order. I knew he must be deeply disappointed. I closed my eyes and curled up in the corner of the prison cell. Why did the third prince betray me? There was only a dim candlelight in the cell, and the quiet surroundings suddenly echoed with the sound of footsteps, which finally stopped in front of my cell. I instinctively turned to look and saw the third prince, Rong Shi, dressed in brocade robes. Jiangji, I've come to see you one last time. My hands and feet were shackled with heavy chains, yet I still walked toward him, each step feeling heavy. I looked at him in despair. Why? I gave you so much time. You clearly had the chance to kill Rongyang. Rong Shi's gaze suddenly turned colder. You're too soft-hearted. I don't need someone with a soft heart. You are not me. So how can you know that I would have softened my heart that day and not taken action? He sneered. If you show mercy once, you'll do it again. I don't have the time to gamble with you. I gritted my teeth. Aren't you afraid I'll expose what you've done to the public? That reminds me, he said with a casual glance. His tone indifferent. The one who attempted to assassinate the crown prince that day was someone else. It has nothing to do with me. Do you think they would believe the words of a lowly servant like you, a prisoner, or the words of this king? Oh, right. Rongshi seemed to suddenly remember something. A slight smile curling his lips. You're about to die. How could you still speak? He laughed heartily a few times, then turned and left. I watched his retreating figure. My heart filled with nothing but hatred, leaving no room for anything else. As soon as Rongshi left, I was taken away by the soldiers. They pressed me to reveal who had ordered me to administer the drug. I told them it was the third prince, but they acted as if they hadn't heard. The force of their whips growing heavier and heavier. I realized they were the third prince's men and this wasn't what they wanted to hear, so I gritted my teeth and said nothing more until I gradually lost consciousness. After waking up in a daze and passing out again, I sat alone in the cold corner of the wall and fell asleep. Spending a day or two like this, the thought that in a few days I would lose my head made my heart turn to ashes. I don't know how much time had passed when a familiar voice suddenly sounded in my ear. Little chrysanthemum. This voice belonged to Rongyang. My body stiffened, and as I opened my eyes, I saw Rongyang's incredibly handsome face. I stared at him blankly, my lips parting as if to speak, but in the end, no words came out. Let me take you back. Rongyang said softly, reaching out to wipe the bloodstains from my face. I thought I must have misheard. My voice was a little hoarse from not having spoken for so long. Does it hurt? He slowly crouched down, meeting my gaze at eye level, and unlocked the restraints on my hands and feet. As the handcuffs came off, the bruises on my wrists were exposed. This was the second time he had asked me if it hurt. I pursed my dry lips. Your Highness, have you mistaken me for someone else? Rongyang didn't answer me, but asked again. Does it hurt? It hurts. He reached out and brushed the stray hairs from my forehead. If it hurts, then you should learn to be more careful. Before I could gather my thoughts, I stammered. What do you mean? Those who serve the third prince will come to no good end. I was stunned, utterly stunned. Does Rongyang, who serves the third prince, already know? If you know I'm the third prince's man, why did you save me? I suddenly felt my eyes grow a little sore. I had imagined every possible outcome, but I never expected that in the end, it would be Rongyang who came to save me. His gaze lingered on my chest for a brief moment before he chuckled lightly, as if joking. I raised you with my own hands. I can't just abandon you. My tears were instantly held back. I bit my lip and asked again, then, are you here to break me out of prison? Fool, I have already explained to His Majesty that there was no drug in the tea that day. Yu was the third prince's agent, and once the plot was exposed, he paused, then continued, I suppose by now, she is already dead. None. I was slightly surprised. I put it in myself, how could there be none? I wasn't surprised that Yu was dead. The third prince could order my death, and he could also bring himself to kill her. I had it replaced long ago, Rong Yang said with a smirk, then asked, can you still walk? Replaced. As I pondered this, I tried to get up by leaning against the wall, but as soon as I stood, a sharp pain shot through my ankle, and I fell back down again. Just as I was about to get up again, Rong Yang bent down and picked me up. When did you know I was the third prince's person? I asked him. Let me think. He pondered for a moment, then laughed and said, oh. I knew as soon as you entered the palace. I was stunned for a long moment before I finally came back to my senses. If you knew all along, why didn't you kill me? Rong Yang's face showed no expression. Because we will become allies. I knew what he meant by allies. He was referring to killing the third prince. I truly hated the third prince. I hated him for deceiving me, betraying me, and even trying to kill me. I will definitely avenge this grudge. Rong Yang quickly brought me back to the palace and summoned the imperial physician. The physician said that with my delicate frame suffering such severe injuries, if I were an ordinary woman, I would have fainted long ago. After the medicine was applied, I fell asleep, but I slept very restlessly. My eyes would open again shortly after closing, as if I were to fall into a deep sleep, someone would take advantage and come to kill me. It was always like this, and after experiencing these events, I became even more cautious. I cannot die. I have not yet taken revenge. After finishing his official duties, Rong Yang returned to the room and slept beside me. He naturally noticed and reached out to pull me into his embrace, gently patting my back. Sleep peacefully. I am here, listening to his gentle voice. I finally fell into a deep sleep, feeling as if my empty heart had suddenly been filled with something. I only heard such a voice on that one night. I rested for a few days. And when I woke up in the morning, the maid told me that the assassin who attempted to kill the crown prince, the one who injured me, had been identified as someone sent by Lord Mu, a subordinate of the third prince. Hearing this, I could only feel the irony. She really found someone to take the blame for him. I got up, had something to eat, and then limped my way to the courtyard where Rong Yang's concubines lived. When I arrived, the other two concubines were there, but Yu was missing. I knew that, just as Rong Yang had said, she had been silenced by the third prince. Moreover, the reason I was released was because Rong Yang had switched the tea. There was no sedative in it. So, Yu's actions that day amounted to framing me, and the emperor would not have spared her either. Now that she has died unjustly without any reason, leaving no evidence, no one else knows the third prince's plan except for me. Suddenly, I felt a bit of danger, because I knew too much about the third prince. Sister, a voice suddenly sounded from behind me. I instinctively turned to look and saw that it was Rong Yang's two concubines calling me. What's wrong? I asked. The woman in blue said, Sister has just been released from prison, and your injuries haven't fully healed yet. It would be best not to move around too much, and also, another woman couldn't hold back, stepping forward to say, Sister's injuries haven't healed yet. I'm afraid she won't be able to serve His Highness the Crown Prince. Why not let His Highness come to my room instead? The woman in blue glanced at her subtly, then smiled and said, Better come to my place. My sister has caught a chill these past few days and might not be able to serve His Highness properly. Come to me, to me. Seeing this, I couldn't help but twitch the corner of my mouth. Rong Yang, this guy, is quite the lucky dog when it comes to women. The two of them argued until they were about to come to blows. Fights, I love watching them the most. I was watching the two of them fight with great interest when the maid beside me pulled me back a little. Your Highness, it's better to keep your distance, so you don't get accidentally hurt. All right. At that moment, I was so engrossed in the scene that I responded perfunctorily and then shouted at the two, Do you even know how to fight? Grab her hair, pinch her, how stupid can you be? I watched anxiously, itching to rush forward myself. Slap her face, what are you doing? A voice suddenly sounded behind me. Turning around, I saw Rong Yang had arrived. In the courtyard, the two concubines knelt before Rong Yang with bruised and swollen faces, considering my injuries hadn't fully healed. Rong Yang allowed me to stand beside them without kneeling. I lowered my head. Rong Yang didn't look at the two of them, but calmly took a sip of tea before asking, Why did you two start fighting? I cleared my throat, not daring to speak. The two of them stammered, unable to say anything, and only glanced at me cautiously. It really wasn't easy to bring this up. I lowered my head even further. Indeed, as a concubine, it was truly inhumane of me not to intervene when I saw the two of them fighting. But instead to cheer them on from the sidelines. Thinking about it, Rong Yang's anger was justified. His two concubines were originally as beautiful as flowers, but now they were beaten black and blue. Who could bear to look at them? With that thought, I quickly said, Your Highness, please don't be angry, otherwise, I'll arrange for you to take 2 more beautiful concubines. Rongyang didn't speak, but he didn't look at me either. Still not enough, I added, then 4. Rongyang still didn't speak. For not enough, I looked at him, a hint of helplessness in my eyes. Your Highness, it's not that I don't want to arrange concubines for you, but your health, I'm afraid you can't handle it. Besides, it's not easy to find such beautiful concubines. Rongyang let out a light scoff, then turned to the 2 and said, step back, I already know everything. The 2 said nothing and silently withdrew. Rongyang finally glanced at me. Not angry but with a smirk at the corner of his lips. Other men's wives are all about jealousy and rivalry, but you're eager to have me take in more concubines. Jealousy and rivalry. What do I have to be jealous about? I dare not. His implication seems to suggest that I am his wife. But I know all too well that this relationship is built on nothing but mutual benefit. Rongyang stood up, reached out, and gently pulled me into his embrace. Dare not, I don't know what he's thinking. But what I do know is this, he doesn't love me, and I don't love him either. Thinking this, I fell silent for a moment and did not answer his question. Instead, I said, Your Highness, once this matter is settled, please grant me a letter of divorce. I wish to leave. After speaking, I glanced at him, afraid that if he got angry, I might lose my head. Rongyang naturally knew I was referring to the matter of the 3rd prince. He neither agreed nor refused, but responded with a faint smile. Why not stay in the palace? Have I treated you poorly? I took a deep breath. To be honest, I'm not getting any younger. After I leave, I'll earn some silver and should really find someone to marry. Rongyang's expression shifted slightly. Why can't that person be me? I could sense that he didn't seem to want me to leave. Hearing his words, I was stunned for a moment, then laughed. Your Highness, surely you don't like me, do you? Why wouldn't I? His tone was quite relaxed, even carrying a hint of amusement. I wasn't sure if he was telling the truth. Rongyang looked at me for a long moment without a word, then changed the subject. How about waiting until everything is over before you decide whether to leave or not? I truly hadn't expected Rongyang to agree to let me go, though I knew I meant nothing to him. No regrets. I raised my hand. Pinky swear. Rongyang looked at my raised hand, paused for a moment, then suddenly burst into laughter. So childish. After saying that, he also raised his hand. A few days later, my injuries had improved significantly. When I woke up in the morning, Rongyang suddenly brought some people over, saying there were some palace affairs that needed to be managed by me, and they were here to teach me. I wondered, as a concubine, why did I have so many responsibilities? Could it be that Rongyang, thinking I might leave, was trying to squeeze every last bit of use out of me? He really doesn't want to suffer the slightest loss. Alas, poor working soul. The court lady who came smiled at me. Let's start with the simplest things first. I was a bit puzzled. Why do I need to learn these? These matters should be handled by the crown princess, but His Highness has no crown princess. So the responsibility naturally falls on you. When will Rongyang take a proper consort? I studied all day, which made my head feel like it was about to explode. So, without even having dinner, I went to bed early, and this went on for several days in a row. Rongyang came every night. I've always been a light sleeper, and the slightest movement would wake me, but I really couldn't be bothered to pay him any attention. Another day, as soon as I lay down, Rongyang snuggled up to me and pulled me into his arms. Little chrysanthemum, how have your studies been these past few days? Trying my best, I replied with a yawn, full of helplessness, and then asked, has your Highness finished your work? He occasionally helps the emperor with some matters, often sitting in the study for several hours at a time. Those matters are naturally not as important as the little chrysanthemum I'm raising, Rongyang said. Then asked again, are you tired? All thanks to your Highness, I said lazily, then added, when will your Highness take a crown princess? I have found a suitable candidate, but she doesn't seem very willing. Your Highness is the crown prince, and being the crown princess brings endless glory. She would have to be out of her mind to be unwilling. I naturally knew that the person Rongyang was referring to couldn't be me, which is why I dared to say such a thing. First, I have no background to speak of, so I can't help him much. Second, I'm not some well-bred lady from a prominent family. Making me the crown princess would definitely be a loss for him. So, with Rongyang's nature of never wanting to suffer losses, he wouldn't marry me as his principal consort. Rongyang lowered his head and chuckled. A hole in the head. Yes, I nodded. Who is the person your Highness has in mind? I'll help you ask if she has a 10-year-old brain clot. I was actually quite enthusiastic about helping Rongyang find a crown princess. After all, with a crown princess, I can have a lot more free time, can't I? Not to mention anything else. Just look at Rong Yang's appearance in this capital. If he claims to be second, no one dares to claim first. How could that girl be so unwilling? His gaze at me held a bit more helplessness. No need, I'll think of another way. After that, I spent a few leisurely days recuperating, occasionally handling palace affairs, and life was quite pleasant. The emperor valued the bonds between his children, frequently summoning the princes and princesses to the palace. As the crown prince, Rong Yang naturally had to attend, and he brought me along under the pretext that the other princes were all accompanied by their wives and children, so he should bring someone too. Thinking it was just a matter of going through the motions with him, I agreed. However, I found it quite strange because, over the past half-month, the third prince had neither sent anyone to kill me nor made any other moves. Logically speaking, if he wanted to kill me, he could just send someone, like last time, even though his men couldn't defeat me. It shouldn't be that there's been no movement for so long, right? I know the third prince won't let me off. Suddenly, I felt my hand being squeezed. I instinctively looked down and realized my hand was being held by another pair of hands. It was Rong Yang's. Little chrysanthemum, what are you thinking about? Rong Yang asked. I quickly pulled my hand back as I came to my senses. He looked at me with a smile. What are you shy about? You're the one with a thick skin. I pursed my lips, telling myself it was just a formality, then reached out and grabbed his sleeve, tugging it gently. I'm not shy at all. Rong Yang smiled but didn't say anything, then led me inside. When we entered the main hall, the third prince was already there. Seeing me walk in, his gaze turned noticeably colder. I indifferently averted my gaze and then sat down. The emperor picked up his wine glass and laughed heartily. We're all family here. No need for formalities. With that, several princes raised their glasses. Only after drinking did I realize that Rong Yang wasn't holding wine. I saw Rong Yang sit down and couldn't help but whisper, Your Highness, why are they drinking wine, while you are drinking tea? Rong Yang glanced at me and suddenly smiled. What, little chrysanthemum, are you concerned about me? In the end, Rong Yang never told me why, and I couldn't be bothered to ask further. At that moment, a maid approached from behind me, holding a pot of hot tea, and stopped by my side, intending to pour tea for me. I shifted aside slightly, and she bent down to pour tea into the cup in front of me. I had just lifted my eyes to look elsewhere when a sudden sharp pain shot through my leg. Looking down, I saw that the maid had spilled the tea. Seeing this, she quickly knelt down. Forgive me, Your Highness, forgive me, consort, I didn't mean to. The tea had just been boiled not long ago, and the scalding liquid spilled onto my leg, making me immediately furrow my brows in pain, with some fabric in between. And considering I've endured injuries both big and small, I only frowned without saying a word. Where did it burn you? Rong Yang's voice came from beside me. When I turned to look, I saw that he was also frowning deeply. I gritted my teeth and moved my leg, thinking it's better to avoid trouble. So I waved my hand at him. It doesn't hurt, I'm used to it. Rong Yang didn't say a word and stood up to carry me, but before he could reach out, the emperor suddenly called out to him, Crown Prince. What is your opinion on this matter? Rong Yang had to withdraw his hand that was about to reach out, his gaze lingering on me for a few seconds before turning to the emperor. It's all right, I'll go change into another one. Seeing the situation, I softly said this and quietly left the main hall, but I had only taken a few steps out of the side hall when I was called to a stop. Jiangxi. I turned to look and saw one of the third prince's close subordinates, Li Fu. I stopped in my tracks, staring at him intently. Li Fu clenched his fists tightly. Jiangxi, what a hypocrite. The third prince ordered you to kill the crown prince, yet now you're colluding with him. I was taken aback for a moment, then let out a scornful laugh. So you came here to blame me? We're in the palace. With so many guards around, I'm not afraid he'll lay a hand on me. Working hand in glove, he was the one who wronged me first. I curled my lips and smiled casually. Besides, the third prince and I have already severed all ties. Don't come looking for me again. Out of some lingering affection, my tone wasn't too cold when I spoke to him. He gritted his teeth. What about the penalty fee? At the mention of this, my eyes darkened. I'll get it to you as soon as possible. Li Fushu, perhaps still holding on to some past affection, though seething with anger, didn't say anything too harsh. I'll let you off this time, but if we meet again, I won't show any mercy. With that, he turned and walked away quickly, his figure gradually disappearing into the night. Little chrysanthemum, a voice suddenly sounded from behind, and I snapped back to reality. I turned to look. It was Rong Yang. His tall figure stood before me. It was too dark, and I couldn't quite make out the expression on his face. I suppose he must have overheard the conversation between Li Fu and me just now. For a moment, I didn't know what to say to him. Your Highness, why have you come out? I spoke with His Majesty, and he allowed us to return to the palace first, Rongyang said as he walked toward me. When he reached my side, he glanced down at my leg. Get on, I'll carry you on my back. No need, Your Highness. I waved my hand. It doesn't hurt, really. The spot that was scalded doesn't really hurt anymore. It just feels a bit numb now. Rongyang glanced at me with a light laugh. What? Do you want me to carry you back? I'm not that kind of overly delicate person. Your Highness, it's really just a minor injury. No need. Come up. I couldn't argue with him, so I dawdled my way forward. Rongyang hoisted me onto his back in one swift motion, his sturdy back pressed firmly against me, radiating warmth. I looked down at our shadows on the ground. In the cool night, the atmosphere was tranquil and peaceful. Thinking of what had just happened, I let out a deep sigh and said, as if negotiating, Your Highness, how about giving me those 500 taels first? Rongyang didn't answer me, instead asking, are you going to give it to them? I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. If I don't give it to them, what if they send someone to kill me, like last time? After thinking for a bit, I added, it wouldn't matter much if I died, but it wouldn't be good if they harmed you, Your Highness. Rongyang's indifferent voice carried a hint of amusement. Do you really think that if you give them the silver, they won't come? I choked up. Yes, the silver is just a pretext. If they really wanted to kill me, why would they care about the silver? Keep the silver to raise a child. Rongyang suddenly spoke up. Raise a child? I thought it over carefully and clicked my tongue. I don't even have a husband right now. Where would a child come from? Am I not your husband? That's just in name. I frowned and thought seriously for a moment. Besides, we haven't done the things that couples do. Rongyang patiently answered my question, raising an eyebrow as he asked, like what? Like going out on the streets together, traveling together. I listed a few examples in detail, but these were just thoughts, because I didn't dare to hope for such days. After I finished speaking, Rongyang responded softly, understood. What did he mean by saying he understood? I couldn't be bothered to ask for details and added, so, Your Highness, are you going to give me the silver or not? No, he said, then suddenly called out to me, little chrysanthemum. Rongyang suddenly called out to me, and I instinctively raised my head. I will protect you. Carried on his back. I couldn't see his expression, but hearing his earnest voice, my gaze wavered slightly. I pressed my lips together, a faint smile tugging at the corners. Your Highness should focus on protecting yourself first. Rongyang just smiled slightly and didn't say anything. Rongyang carried me on his back all the way back to the palace and then fetched some medicine for the wound. Come here, let me apply the medicine, Rongyang said softly, holding the ointment. The burn was on my thigh, which made me feel a bit embarrassed. After thinking for a long time, I stammered, no need, Your Highness, I can manage on my own. As soon as I finished speaking, I reached out to take the ointment. Rongyang didn't hand it over. Nor did he say a word. It seemed he had no intention of giving in. Be good. I looked into his eyes, hesitated for a few seconds, then slowly and reluctantly lifted my skirt. Also, Your Highness, why do you always call me little chrysanthemum? Can't you call me Tsuehua instead? I swear, this is the last time I'll say this to Rongyang. Rongyang lowered his head, carefully applying medicine to me. After staying silent for a moment, he pursed his lips and said slowly, the first time we met was in a chrysanthemum field. I was taken aback. A chrysanthemum field? He responded softly, then lifted his gaze to glance at me. I know you don't remember. I remained silent. The only place I know with chrysanthemum fields is in the eastern outskirts, a very distant location where I once stayed for a short while. Rongyang let out a long sigh and continued, it was a few years ago, on my way back to the capital. When I was being pursued by the third prince's men, I encountered you in the chrysanthemum fields, and you saved me. Hearing him say that, it seems I do have some impression of it. Just because of this, Rongyang responded, his eyes darkening with an indescribable emotion as he lowered his head again to apply the medicine for me. After all these years, Your Highness can still remember my appearance. Dude, you're really something. So you recognized me as soon as I entered the palace. Knew my identity, and deliberately kept me by your side to work for you. Understood. Hearing this answer, I felt a strange, vague sensation in my heart for some reason. After thinking for a while, I asked again, what would have happened if I had actually made a move that night? Rongyang remembered which night I was referring to and suddenly curled the corner of his lips. Then you would have been reincarnated by now. It seems I have always been within his calculations. I don't even know why he is doing all this for me now. Your Highness, why don't you just divorce me? Thinking this, I lowered my head to look at myself. I have no chest, no curves, keeping me here is just raising another idler. Rongyang gave me a deep look and raised an eyebrow slightly. No rush, you will, here we go again. After that, neither of us spoke again. He finished applying the medicine for me and was now lowering his head to tidy up the medicine bottles. I looked down at his focused expression, a strange feeling stirring in my heart. I've made it this far, and no matter how badly I was hurt, I always endured it alone. Your Highness, you don't really like me, do you? This was the second time I had asked him this question. Rongyang slowly lifted his gaze, letting it linger on my face for a moment before replying unhurriedly, has my performance not been obvious enough? I looked at his handsome face and was stunned for a moment. But there are other women in his palace, like the two brightly dressed butterflies in the backyard, his concubines in green and pink. Meeting Rongyang's gaze, I smiled. Your Highness has quite the open heart. He certainly has many favorites. However, I don't quite believe what he said. Rongyang gave me a deep look, as if he knew what I was thinking. Little chrysanthemum, I only like you. As he spoke, he took off his outer robe and lay down beside me. I could tell from his tone that he wasn't joking. What about those two in the backyard? I asked. Rongyang lay on his side, gazing at me, his pale, slender fingers toying with my hair. When have you ever seen me go to their chambers? He seemed to enjoy playing with my hair. I was left speechless once again. Indeed, since I entered the palace, I had never seen Rongyang visit them, nor had he even exchanged more than a few words with them. Rongyang turned to look at me, and seeing that I remained silent, his tone grew a bit more languid. Rest now. Tomorrow, I'll take you out for a stroll. Take me out for a stroll. I thought he was just teasing me after all. As the crown prince of a nation, how could he have so much free time? Thinking this, I nodded softly and murmured in response, all right. The next day, when I woke up in the morning, Rongyang was already gone. I don't have the habit of sleeping in, so I got up early. At the moment, the maid was helping me wash and dress. She sighed, miss, it seems our palace will soon have a crown princess. I yawned, yesterday, when you went out to change clothes, you weren't aware of this matter. She paused, then continued, the emperor intended to appoint Lord Li's daughter as the crown prince's consort. But shortly after you left last night, His Highness followed you out, so the two of them didn't even get a chance to speak. I was slightly taken aback. The crown prince's consort, the maid behind me cautiously responded. Yes. Hearing this, I felt a strange, indescribable emotion stirring inside me. Though I couldn't quite explain why, I pressed my lips together and simply replied softly, In the evening, it happened to be Qixi festival that day. After dinner, Rongyang, true to his word from the night before, said he would take me out for a stroll. Rongyang walked in from outside and said softly, let's go, little chrysanthemum. I looked up at him, slightly taken aback, not expecting his promise to be genuine. I don't enjoy crowds, but I was afraid you might feel bored, he said as he approached me, looking down. Your Highness, I don't feel bored at all. I feel that you are feeling bored. Is this some kind of tongue twister? I didn't want to argue with him, so I reluctantly agreed. It was just a trip out, after all. Then I changed into casual clothes and left the palace. The streets were adorned with lanterns and decorations everywhere, bustling with a large crowd and a lively atmosphere. Walking beside Rongyang, I remembered that today was the Qixi festival. I turned to him and asked, Your Highness, since it's Qixi festival today, is it really appropriate for the two of us to be together? Appropriate. The street was crowded, and Rongyang casually replied before taking my hand, don't get lost. Just as I was about to let go of his hand, a woman approached us, smiling softly at Rongyang and calling out in a low voice, Your Highness. When she approached me, her gaze seemed to glance at me inadvertently. Then she lowered her eyes and asked with a smile, What a coincidence to meet Your Highness here. Do you recognize me? Perhaps afraid that the people coming and going on the street would recognize our identities, she spoke in a soft voice. Rongyang's gaze turned slightly cold. I don't recognize you. The woman's smile stiffened, and she seemed at a loss for a moment, but still said, Your Highness, I am Li Fu, the youngest daughter of Minister Li. I looked at the smile on her face, somewhat awkwardly averted my gaze, and said nothing. I suppose the daughter of Minister Li that the maid mentioned this morning must be her, Rongyang's future crown princess. Rongyang responded lightly, his expression unreadable. Li Fu looked up and asked softly, Your Highness, may Fu accompany you? Ask her. Rongyang raised an eyebrow and looked at me, tossing the question my way like a ball. I was taken aback for a moment, then nodded, Of course I can, she's a young lady of high status. And Rongyang's future crown princess, I can't afford to offend her. Before I could even gather my thoughts, Rongyang finished speaking, took my hand, and turned to leave. Though his expression didn't look too good, Li Fu behind me quickly followed as well. I couldn't figure out why he was unhappy. Little chrysanthemum. Rongyang suddenly called out to me. I snapped back to reality and turned to look at him. Rongyang's expression softened slightly, becoming less cold. And he glanced toward a nearby stall. There's a sugar painting vendor over there. Would you like to try one? No need. Before I could refuse, Rongyang had already pulled me over. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, I held a golden, gleaming sugar painting in my hand, and Li Fu beside me had one too. The difference was, the sugar painting in my hand was bought by Rongyang, while hers was bought by herself. I held the sugar figurine, gently swaying it in front of Rongyang. Your Highness, don't you want it? Rongyang said indifferently. I don't like sweets. Alright, I didn't think much of it. One hand held the sugar figurine, and the other hand, I don't know when, was taken by him again, the kind that couldn't be shaken off. The evening breeze blew in gusts, but it couldn't disperse the warmth of his palm, a warmth that reached deep into my heart. Li Fu still followed behind us in silence. Rongyang gestured for me to look at the crowd over there. There are many people over there, let's go take a look. Didn't you say you don't like crowds? I took a bite of the sugar figurine and was about to head over when a sudden scream came from the lively gathering. The next moment, several figures in black descended from above, swords in hand, glaring at us fiercely, causing the surrounding people to scatter in panic. It was clear that these people were after us, and I recognized their attire. They were the third prince's men. Perfect timing. My gaze turned colder, frost gradually gathering in my eyes as I handed the sugar figure to Rongyang. Take this and find a place to hide. Rongyang curved his lips slightly without a word, then walked to the side by himself. I watched as they charged toward us, and in the next moment, I dashed forward to meet them. A man in black thrust his sword at me. I sidestepped to dodge, but he turned and lunged at me again, incredibly fast. My gaze sharpened, and I bent down to dodge his strike. Then kicked him in the abdomen. He staggered back several steps, and the people behind him no longer dared to charge at us. Sis, you're so cool. Suddenly, someone shouted from behind. I instinctively turned to look. It was Li Fu calling out to me. Snapping back to reality, I was about to rush forward when the guards quickly apprehended those who hadn't managed to escape. I kicked away the person charging at me, let out a sigh of relief, and just as I turned around, Li Fu, who had been standing to the side, ran over. Her big eyes gazed at me affectionately. Sister, you were so cool just now. Before I could say anything, Rongyang's voice suddenly sounded beside me. Are you hurt? These people couldn't harm me. So I shook my head. No. Li Fu leaned in closer to me again, almost pushing Rongyang aside. Sister, could you give me a chance? I was stunned. Rongyang, inexplicably shoved aside, frowned in displeasure and pulled me into his arms, as if protecting something precious. Let's head back to the palace first. I looked at those who had been captured and nodded. All right. Rongyang then promptly led me away. His eyes filled with helplessness as he looked at me. While walking, he handed me the half-eaten sugar figurine he was holding, his handsome brows slightly furrowed. Little chrysanthemum. Stay away from Li Fu from now on. Holding the half-eaten sugar figurine, I was somewhat puzzled. Why? Li Fu is going to enter the palace sooner or later. Why would Rongyang tell me to stay away from her? I don't want to see her with you. The next day, Rongyang's guards informed me that the people we had captured from the third prince's side yesterday had all taken their own lives, leaving us with no useful information. Now, all I want is to see the third prince utterly disgraced. Yet I can't seem to obtain any useful leads. In the afternoon, several maids hurriedly came to find me. Miss, Lady Li Fu from the Li family is here and specifically asked for you. What should we do? The maid asked anxiously, looking at me. I didn't look up, leisurely pouring myself a cup of tea. What do you mean, what to do? You are His Highness's most favored one. That Miss Li is the crown princess appointed by the emperor herself. Now that she's entering the palace today, she's surely coming to put you in your place. But I have no intention of competing for favor. I just want to be an unnoticed, insignificant presence. I took a sip of tea and said indifferently, let her have whatever she wants. After all, everything in this palace belongs to Rongyang, so giving it to his crown princess isn't really wrong. Before I could even set down my teacup, a loud shout came from outside the door. Sister. The next moment, the door to my room was pushed open. And Li Fu looked at me with a beaming smile. Sister, I've come to see you. I was taken aback, and so was the maid beside me. Why is it different from what I imagined? Seeing me in a daze, Li Fu stepped forward. Sister, don't you remember me? We just met yesterday. I remember. I cleared my throat and continued, that, His Highness is in the study right now, not here with me. Upon hearing this, Li Fu frowned. Fua came to see you. Sister, Fua likes you, to see me. I was taken aback for a moment, then pressed my lips together and smiled. All right. Li Fu leaned her little face closer, blinking her big eyes, and said softly, Sister, I don't know any martial arts. Can you teach me? I didn't hesitate and agreed. Sure. In the courtyard, the servants had originally brought an iron sword, but this young girl had no foundation in martial arts and could barely hold the sword steady. Helplessly, we switched to a wooden one. She held the wooden sword cheerfully. Sister, how do I hold this sword? I stepped forward, adjusted the sword, and had her grip it steadily, like this. Li Fu waved the sword in front of me and laughed. Sister, teach me some simple moves. All right, I replied softly, then picked up another wooden sword to demonstrate for her, but before I could reach out, she walked up to me and said, Sister, I still don't understand it even if you do it like this. I blinked. Then, what should we do? Li Fu thought for a few seconds and suddenly smiled. How about you teach me hand in hand? I was slightly taken aback but still nodded. All right, however, this is not something that can be mastered overnight, especially since she is just a weak woman who can't even lift a sword. I walked up and held her hand that was gripping the sword from behind, guiding it through a simple move. She turned around, her excited and joyful gaze landing on my face. So amazing, it was just some simple moves. Nothing more. Sister, teach me one more time. All right, I smiled softly and was about to step forward. Just as I raised my hand, my wrist was suddenly grabbed by a pair of hands. With a gentle tug, the person pulled me into their embrace. Before I could steady myself, a familiar voice sounded above my head. Little chrysanthemum, what are you doing? It's Rong Yang. What can I do? Could Rong Yang possibly think I bullied his future crown princess? Li Fu looked rather pale and whispered. Your Highness, that's not right. Rong Yang is here. Shouldn't she be happy? Rong Yang frowned when he saw her. Someone, escort Miss Li back to the residence immediately. Li Fu gave me a pitiful look, seemingly unwilling to go back, but struggling was in vain, and Li Fu was eventually sent back. I was watching Li Fu gradually fading into the distance when a low voice suddenly whispered in my ear, Little chrysanthemum, stay away from her from now on. I can't bear to see you getting close to others. Not even women. The next moment, my slightly cold hand was grasped by his. His deep voice sent a shiver through my entire ear. I steadied my emotions, looked up at him, and said, Your Highness, isn't she your future crown princess? So I'm getting along well with his future crown princess. And he's not happy about it. Rong Yang paused for a moment, seemingly surprised that I knew about this, and then asked, Is her becoming the crown princess your idea? Rong Yang suddenly asking me this actually made me freeze for a moment. I stayed silent for a few seconds, and for some reason, my heart suddenly felt sour, but I still said, It's entirely up to your Highness to decide. He's marrying the crown princess. What can I, a consort, say about it? Li Fu is a daughter of a noble family who can help him in many ways. While I can offer him nothing, Rong Yang's hand, which had been holding mine, suddenly let go. The warmth from his palm vanished in an instant, leaving my heart feeling hollow. All right, he said this word softly, yet it felt like a pair of hands tightening around my neck, making it hard to breathe. Why am I like this? Rong Yang turned around and strode out. Forget it, it's just as well that he left. I knew this day would come between us sooner or later. Once I deal with the third prince, we will go our separate ways and have nothing more to do with each other. I no longer wish to wait any longer regarding the matter of the third prince. Once there was some concern, and I still wanted to find a safer way, but now that Rong Yang has also left, I'll take a gamble. Soon it was night, and I changed into my night clothes, ready to infiltrate the third prince's residence. Just as I was about to push the door open, the door that had been tightly shut was suddenly opened. My body stiffened. This isn't right. I had sent away the nearby guards and maids. No one should be coming. The man didn't speak. In the dim moonlight of the night, I could see his face clearly. It was Rong Yang's face. His originally fair complexion was tinged with a faint blush. His somewhat dazed gaze fixed intently on my face. He said nothing, just stared at me steadily. Remembering that I was wearing night clothes at the moment, I quickly lowered my head. Rong Yang's hand rested on the half-open door, then he suddenly reached out and pinched my chin, forcing me to look up at him. A faint smile curled at the corner of his lips as he asked in a low voice, Little chrysanthemum, where are you off to? In the pitch-black night, His voice sounded especially alluring. I hastily pointed outside and said, "Your Highness, the moonlight is particularly lovely tonight. I just wanted to go out and admire it. I had thought Rong Yang would never come to see me again. At this moment, my feelings are somewhat complicated." He rubbed my chin with his thumb, his eyes filled with an indescribable desire. "You're not allowed to go." After he spoke, the air carried a hint of alcohol. I could tell he seemed to have had a bit too much to drink. Thinking this, I asked, "Your Highness, have you had too much to drink?" "I haven't had any wine. Could it be that I drank it?" Rong Yang had closed the door at some point and was pulling me along as he leisurely walked further inside. I was becoming more and more unable to understand what he intended to do. I followed behind him with a helpless expression. "Your Highness, what are you trying to do?" Rong Yang pressed me down to sit on the bed, then suddenly leaned in close. I stared at his face, so near I could almost touch it, and couldn't help but swallow hard. "Little chrysanthemum, how do you think I look?" His sudden question left me dumbfounded for a moment. When did Rong Yang start asking such questions? I tugged at the corner of my lips and smiled. "Your Highness is the most handsome man I have ever seen." "What part is handsome?" Rong Yang asked again. I carefully examined his face, my gaze finally settling on his slightly red eyes. The eyes are beautiful. I've heard that people with beautiful eyes will have children with beautiful eyes too. Rong Yang paused deliberately, his stunning face leaning closer to me, his voice low and husky. "Little chrysanthemum, would you like to give it a try?" "Your Highness, you're not asking me to be your son, are you?" I blinked, carefully pondering his words, then gave him a look of disbelief. "Your Highness, that's no way to get back at someone. How foolish." Rong Yang frowned slightly. "I'm talking about our child." I was stunned for a long moment, still not fully processing it. "Our child? He responded. "If I really have a child, I'll be damned if I leave." "Your Highness, didn't we agree to part ways after dealing with the third prince?" "I've changed my mind." After saying this, he lowered his head to kiss my forehead, then leisurely took off his outer robe. "Little chrysanthemum, stay." But the third prince?" His warm hands rested at my waist, while the other hand idly played with my hair. "I will handle the arrangements regarding the third prince. Then, what can I do to help?" Rong Yang leaned down, gently biting my lip. "Have a child. When the time comes to fight, we'll have someone to help." He finished with a light laugh. "I'll take that as your agreement." Before I could react, he had already lowered his head and kissed my lips. I gazed into his deep eyes, and his voice whispered low and soft in my ear once more. "Jiangxi." Rong Yang called my name. "I ask you once more, do you truly not have even the slightest affection for me?" It was the first time he had called me by my name, my original name. "Would you not feel the slightest sorrow, no matter how many women I marry?" I was speechless and slightly turned my head away. "Speak." Rong Yang's tone grew more forceful. He looked at me, staring intently as if seeking an answer. I pressed my lips together, hesitating for a long moment before stammering. Probably, yes. To say I wasn't sad would be a lie. I just felt that the woman by his side ought to be better than me. Rong Yang was stunned for a moment, then the corners of his lips curled into a faint smile as he uttered something I couldn't quite understand. "That's enough." "What's enough?" He shook his head gently, then suddenly leaned in closer to me. "How about becoming this prince's crown princess?" Hearing this, I froze. I know that making Li Fu the crown princess was the emperor's intention. Although the decree hasn't been issued yet, Rong Yang couldn't possibly defy the emperor's will. So I don't quite believe what he said. "Yang, the palace is too deep and treacherous. You can't handle it." The next morning when I woke up, Rong Yang was already gone. Later, I heard from the servants that he had been summoned to the palace by the emperor. Everything that happened last night felt like a dream. In the afternoon, Li Fu entered the palace and came straight to me. "Sister, can't you really give me a chance?" I remained silent for a while, seeing that I didn't speak. Li Fu pouted listlessly. "Forget it. Being sisters with you is still wonderful." I chatted with Li Fu all afternoon. You say one thing and I say another, and only then did I learn that she actually didn't want to be the crown princess on the Qixi festival. The reason she wanted to join us was because her father had told her to go. Later, a few eunuchs walked in with practiced ease, called out my name loudly, and told me to receive the imperial decree. I looked up at them in confusion, swallowed my saliva, and still obediently knelt down. The others followed suit and knelt as well. I lowered my head, my palms involuntarily clenching. I thought I haven't committed murder or arson, right? Surely they won't lock me up for life. The moment the old eunuch finished reading the imperial decree, I hadn't yet snapped out of my daze, until Li Fu quietly tugged at the corner of my sleeve. "Sister, quickly accept the decree." Her tone was full of barely concealed laughter. I came to my senses, nodded, and accepted the decree. At that moment, only 4 words echoed in my mind: Rong Yang is amazing. By the time Rong Yang returned, it was nearly evening, and a light rain had begun to fall outside. At that moment, I was standing by the small pond, holding an umbrella and feeling rather gloomy. I watched as Rong Yang approached, then quickly walked toward him with my umbrella. The rain, though not heavy, was enough to dampen clothes in the drizzling breeze. His figure appeared particularly solitary. I walked up to him and instinctively moved the umbrella toward him, saying, "Your Highness, I have something to ask you." Rong Yang unhurriedly reached out and took the umbrella from me, responding softly before asking, "The imperial edict matter?" I twitched the corner of my mouth, swallowing the damn impressive that was stuck in my throat, and asked, "Your Highness, how on earth did you persuade the emperor?" Although the emperor did not issue an edict to confer the title upon Li Fu, it must have taken him considerable effort to make the emperor change his mind. "It's nothing much." Rong Yang glanced down at me, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. His fair hand gripped the umbrella handle as he led me back. "I just agreed to one thing for my father." Rong Yang paused briefly and, without waiting for me to speak, continued, "This matter will require your full cooperation." "My cooperation?" I asked again to confirm. Rong Yang nodded. "Yes." Hearing this, I hesitated and asked, "Then, what is it?" He suddenly smiled. "I promised my father that I would have 2 children in 3 years. I almost thought I had misheard. 3 years. 2 kids. Honey, I suggest you find a few more sisters to share the burden." I shook my head and waved my hands repeatedly. "Then I won't be the crown princess anymore." Rong Yang raised an eyebrow and glanced at me indifferently. "What, little chrysanthemum, are you thinking of defying the imperial decree? You seem to have some serious issues." We soon returned to the room, and the rain outside gradually intensified, with bin-sized raindrops falling and splattering all over the ground. The room was filled with books he usually enjoyed reading. He casually picked one up, and I also selected one that interested me. "You like this one?" I was just about to leave with the sword technique manual I had chosen when Rong Yang suddenly said this. I stopped in my tracks. He shook his head, a hint of helplessness flickering in his eyes, but he didn't say anything more. I didn't speak either. Carrying the book, I walked to a table not far from him, sat down, and opened to the first page. After that, neither of us spoke again. I was almost halfway through the book when I felt a bit thirsty. Looking up at Rong Yang, he was still slightly bowing his head, his gaze fixed intently on the scroll. Only the constant pitter-patter of rain outside could be heard, occasionally accompanied by the sound of pages turning. The atmosphere in the room was exceptionally tranquil. Such days were something I never dared to hope for. I stared intently at his face, my mind filled with the soft whispers he had murmured in my ear last night. I swallowed, my heartbeat quickening involuntarily. I don't know if this feeling is called liking someone, because I've never felt this way before, but I think it probably is. I like him too. Thinking carefully, in this world, the only one who has been good to me is him. I know no one should be this good to me, so I want to be good to him too, but I just don't know what to do. What's wrong? Rong Yang might have noticed that I had been watching him for a long time, and he looked up at me. I shook my head, wanting to say something, but my throat felt a bit dry, so I had to swallow my words. Rong Yang seemed to notice something, put down his book, walked over to me, and raised the corner of his lips. "Missing me so soon? What the heck?" Seeing that I remained silent, Rong Yang patiently asked again, "What are you thinking about?" I pondered for a few seconds, then looked up. "Your Highness, is there anything you desire? Why ask so suddenly?" Rong Yang paused for a moment, slightly lowering his gaze, a faint smile still lingering at the corner of his lips. When I looked into his eyes, he was also looking at me, his gaze full of anticipation. He let out a low, muffled sound from his throat. "I just wanted to repay your Highness out of pure gratitude," I said honestly, then frowned as I sensed something off. "Your Highness, you're not expecting me to offer myself in marriage, are you?" "Not at all." Hearing that, I breathed a sigh of relief. "You're already mine." Wouldn't I be at a loss if that were the case? He stood up, thought for a moment, and said, "I'll let you know when I think of something." Such beautiful and peaceful days continued until the day of the investiture. That was a month later. After completing the tedious rituals, it was already evening. Tonight's moonlight is beautiful. I am dressed in a red wedding gown, and Rong Yang is also wearing a red wedding robe. I have truly become the crown princess, the one he formerly married, the crown princess personally appointed by the emperor's decree. Rong Yang lifted my bridal veil. Under the candlelight, his face looked incredibly handsome. He called out to me softly, "Little chrysanthemum." The name isn't very pleasant, but I'm used to it by now, so I still responded, Rong Yang's gaze carefully traced the contours of my brows and eyes. "You look beautiful today." After saying this, he began to lean in toward me, but before he could get closer, a sudden wave of nausea churned in my stomach, and I turned my head aside, retching a few times. Seeing this, Rong Yang frowned, instinctively reaching out to gently pat my back. "What's wrong?" After I had recovered a bit, I shook my head and said, "I'm fine." As soon as I finished speaking, I felt like throwing up again. Rong Yang's expression shifted slightly. While gently patting my back, he raised his voice and called out, "Someone, go fetch the imperial physician." The imperial physician arrived quickly and took my pulse. Even though I had told Rong Yang that I was fine, Rong Yang asked in a low voice, "How is she?" I watched as the imperial physician's pupils slightly dilated, and then he rose to his feet only to kneel down again. "Your Highness, the crown princess, she is with child." As his words fell, the atmosphere around us suddenly froze. Rong Yang, for once, was taken aback. "Say that again. Say that again." Our voices rang out almost simultaneously. Your Highness consort, congratulations, you are with child." I watched Rong Yang's expression remain unchanged for a long moment, and couldn't help but fall into deep thought. He might not be very fond of children, but that's just as well. Having a burden like that would indeed be troublesome. I pursed my lips, turned to him, and said, "Your Highness, I understand, there's no need to force it. As it happens, I'm not very fond of them either." At that moment, Rong Yang, who had been silent all this time, suddenly laughed and exclaimed loudly, "Excellent, a reward. Everyone in the palace shall receive a generous reward." Reward? What kind of joke is this? Now it's settled. Forget about assassinating the third prince, I can't even jump around a little. The news of my pregnancy quickly spread throughout the imperial palace. In just 2 months, the threshold of the Eastern Palace was nearly worn out from all the visitors, but Rong Yang had them all driven away. During this time, I also thought about sneaking out, but Rong Yang always found out and dragged me back. I thought he wasn't usually this idle. 2 months later, there was another palace banquet. It seemed the emperor wanted to see me and also wished for the family to reunite properly. So he arranged this banquet. It's not hard to see that the emperor has always valued family bonds. I don't have much of an appetite, so I only took a few bites before feeling full. Plus, the hall was a bit stuffy, so I decided to step out for some fresh air. After pestering him for a long time, Rong Yang finally agreed to let me go out. Once I left the main hall, my foggy mind cleared up quite a bit. I hadn't walked far when a man came toward me, staring at me intently. I recognized him at a glance. He was the third prince's subordinate, named Black Garlic. "Jiangji, it's you," I responded softly. Black Garlic frowned, his gaze lingering on my stomach for a moment, his tone tinged with anger. "Didn't our master order you to kill the crown prince? And now you've ended up like this." Before he could finish, I had already chuckled softly. "Master, kill whom?" "The crown prince." "The crown prince?" I curled the corner of my lips. "That's my husband. What are you talking about?" "You." Haesuan gritted his teeth, momentarily at a loss for words, and after a long pause, he finally said, "The third prince says he is willing to give you a chance. His Highness is kind-hearted. As long as you seize this opportunity properly, the third prince might even forgive you. Don't forget. You are the third prince's person." "His person?" I sneered. "I've never been anyone's person. From the day he framed me and tried to kill me, I parted ways with him. That he could still say such things now truly disgusted me. I didn't want to waste any more words on him, so I turned and left." Life quickly picked up its pace again. Over the past few months, Rong Yang has been extremely busy, likely due to border affairs. However, I've never been particularly interested in court matters, so I don't know the specifics. During the day, I practice swordplay, and occasionally at night too, but as my due date approaches, I'm often stopped before I even get started. Whenever I have free time, I go to the study to find him. That night, sitting far to the side, I found the storybook in my hands rather dull and yawned a few times. Rong Yang glanced over and asked softly, "Little chrysanthemum, are you sleepy?" I nodded honestly. He slightly closed the book in his hand, a faint smile curling at the corner of his lips. "I'll hold you while you sleep." Rong Yang didn't say anything, just stared at me intently, making me feel uneasy. I hesitated for a moment, then reluctantly walked over. Just as I walked over, Rong Yang pulled me into his arms, his movements very careful, and said in a low voice, "These days, the third prince has been rather restless." "What's wrong?" I asked. Rong Yang said, He has been secretly buying troops and horses recently. I suspect it won't be long before he makes a move." After hearing this, my expression changed slightly, and I whispered, "Is he planning a rebellion?" Rong Yang just nodded without saying a word. I wasn't surprised to hear that. After all, the third prince is an ambitious man with ruthless methods. Rong Yang leaned his head gently on my shoulder, his voice full of exhaustion. "I'll be coming back late these days. You're not going somewhere to have fun, are you?" I blinked and quickly added, "Take me with you." "You fool, it's about the court affairs." He seemed amused by my words and continued, "Little chrysanthemum, I don't have time to watch over you. Take good care of yourself." Every word he spoke struck deep in my heart. I nodded and added, "I thought you would tell me to go out less." Rong Yang let out a light scoff. "If you run around recklessly, then I'll come back and give you a beating." "Beat me?" I snorted dismissively. "You couldn't beat me even if you tried." Rong Yang merely chuckled softly and said nothing more. As the due date approached, Rong Yang wouldn't let me move around much, so I had to stay put in the palace, but being unable to sit idle, I was currently sitting in the courtyard sharpening my knife. The maid who always attended to me saw this and hurried over, saying helplessly, "Your Highness, other ladies at home either admire flowers or do embroidery, but you, sharpening a knife in the courtyard, if His Highness finds out." Hearing this, I looked up and smiled at her. "This little knife of mine is razor sharp." The maid, at that moment, a guard hurriedly ran to my door and shouted, "Your Highness, run, the third prince has rebelled." It happened so suddenly, most of the palace guards have been dispatched to protect the emperor. We must hurry. The sound of clashing swords rang out from outside the courtyard, accompanied by the noise of blades piercing flesh. The next moment, an arrow shot into the courtyard, piercing straight through the guard's body. Before I could even react, a group of soldiers crowded in through the door. I recognized the leader, the third prince's lackey. The familiar face of Black Garlic is also there, standing behind him now. "It seems they come with ill intentions." The man sneered, "Guards, kill her for me." As soon as he finished speaking, Black Garlic nearby frowned. "The third prince said he wants to finish her off personally." "What? Are you disobeying the third prince's order? This woman must die." The man paid no heed, roughly shoving Haesuan aside. "If the third prince questions it later, we'll say she chose to take her own life rather than die miserably at our hands." "You." Haesuan glared at him, though seething with anger. He swallowed his words. I frowned deeply. Many soldiers from the courtyard rushed out, forming a barrier in front of me. Though numerous, it was nearly impossible for them to hold the others back. The man only sneered. "Do these few people think they can stop me?" As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his hand, and the soldiers behind him charged toward me, only to be intercepted by them. I knew they couldn't possibly hold off so many people. Gritting my teeth, I raised my sword and prepared to charge forward as well. The maid was startled and pulled me back. "Your Highness, let's take advantage of the chaos and slip out through the back door." I pressed my lips together and said nothing. "I don't want to leave, but I'm pregnant now, and I don't know where Rong Yang is, so I can't be willful. If I stay and die here, then all the guards who are protecting me will have sacrificed themselves in vain." I hesitated, my hand gripping the sword tightly, but in the end, I was pulled away by the maid. I had only taken a few steps when a sudden cramp in my stomach made me almost lose my balance. The maid quickly came to support me and asked with concern, "Your Highness, what's wrong?" The sounds of soldiers fighting behind me continued to echo. I instinctively reached out to steady myself against the wall, gritting my teeth. "My stomach hurts." The maid was taken aback for a moment, then grasped my hand. "Your Highness, are you going into labor?" "Ah." I looked at the maid in astonishment. "No way, right now." No sooner had I spoken than the pain intensified. A few sharp-eyed soldiers spotted us and charged straight toward us. I frowned, took a deep breath, and pulled the still-dazed maid behind me. Fortunately, these soldiers weren't highly skilled. Gritting my teeth, I fought them off with my sword, then pushed the maid away. "Go on ahead." I don't know when, but a fine, cold sweat began to break out on my forehead. The maid, looking at the blood all over the floor, cried anxiously, sobbing, "Your Highness, then, what will you do?" I waved my hand and forced a faint smile. "In my current state, I can't leave." More and more soldiers noticed us and then charged toward us. "You all, have you also forgotten the third prince's words? If even a single hair on her head is harmed, all of you can expect to lose your heads." A voice came from not far away. I followed the sound and saw that it was Haesuan. Those men seemed too afraid to disobey him, and they all timidly stepped back a few paces with their knives, waiting for further orders. Black Garlic approached, his expression not very pleasant, but he still said, "Jiangxi, Just consider it me taking pity on you. While I cover for you now, hurry and leave." I looked at him deeply, wanting to say thank you, but the pain made it impossible to utter even half a word. I could only nod. Then struggled to get back on my feet. I was surprised that black garlic would help me, whatever his reasons might be, but I had only taken a couple of steps when more and more people rushed into the courtyard. We were completely surrounded, and Haesuan was captured as well. By this point, I could no longer stand. Clenching my teeth, I slid down along the wall and sat on the ground. The maid knelt beside me, weeping uncontrollably. "Run, ha!" Outside the door, the third prince swayed in. His steps finally halting right in front of me. "Jiangxi, I've come personally to see you one last time. Where do you think you're running to?" He toyed with the knife in his hand and sneered. "Enough with the nonsense. I'll just send you and that bastard in your belly on your way." I said nothing, my hands tightly shielding my belly as I turned my head away. Just as the third prince raised his hand and the knife was about to fall, an arrow shot over. "Who's there?" The sharp arrow pierced through his right shoulder, causing him to stagger several steps. Seeing this, I gritted my teeth, picked up the sword that had fallen to the ground, and despite the pain, I stood up with all my strength and thrust the sword into his heart. "This is what you owe me." The third prince's eyes widened as he looked at me in disbelief, until he fell heavily to the ground. I took a deep breath, beads of sweat the size of peas slid down my temples. And I felt my vision gradually blurring. I only remember that as I fell, someone caught me. The last thing I saw was Rongyang's face. I just felt so tired, and my sleep was far from peaceful. In my dreams, it felt like someone was shaking me awake, telling me not to sleep, urging me to push. I pushed, and the sensation, it was like taking a massive dump. When I woke up again, it was already the evening of the next day. The first person I saw upon opening my eyes was Rongyang, Little Chrysanthemum. He called me, with that familiar voice and that familiar nickname. My throat felt very dry, so I only managed to utter a faint mm. He called me again, Little Chrysanthemum. I couldn't be bothered to respond, so I simply closed my eyes. Later on, Rongyang told me that the third prince had died. The rebellion had been quelled, and we had a son. Even later, I saw my son, in his swaddling clothes. He was just a tiny little thing, lying quietly in Rongyang's arms. I asked Rongyang, "Have you thought of a name for the baby yet?" Rongyang shook his head and said softly, "Wait until you wake up, we'll think of it together." I recalled last night's experience and suddenly felt somewhat sentimental. I clicked my tongue and said casually, "Let's just call him Lala." "Why?" "Because I was the one who pulled him out." Extra story 1. My son takes after me. He started wielding swords and knives at just 5 years old. Fortunately, under his father's, that is, Rongyang's, guidance, he hasn't neglected his studies. The child's looks are quite good, too, making him especially popular with little girls, to the point where I'm a bit worried I might become a grandmother at a young age. But later, I stopped worrying, as he doesn't seem interested in those matters of love and romance. When he was 5 years old, I saw that lonely little figure under the setting sun, and I felt quite comforted. Every time at moments like this, I would walk over, pat his little head, and say with deep emotion, as expected of the one I gave birth to. But he occasionally asks me why only I call him Lala. That's right, I just love calling him that in private. At this point, I would shift the blame to Rongyang. "Your father named it. Go ask him." So he actually went and asked, but the result he got was, "Your mother named it. Go ask her." So much so that he doubted whether he was picked up from a latrine, and the kind that still carried a smell. Extra story 2. I, Rongyang, am Jiangxi's husband. Recalling the first time I heard her name, it was from my guard, who told me that she was an assassin sent by the third prince, using the alias Tsuehua, and had infiltrated my palace. I originally intended to eliminate her, but the moment I saw her, I recognized her. Many years ago, she had saved me in a field of chrysanthemums, but judging by her dazed look, she probably didn't recognize me. After that day, I called her to serve by my side. She wanted to kill me and tried many methods. For example, she tried to push me while I was using the toilet, hoping to make me fall into the cesspit and die, but the outcome was that she almost fell in herself. Luckily, she had some martial arts skills, or she would have gone from being Tsuexiang, fragrant jade, to Funxiang, fragrant dung. For example, in the middle of the night, she put a white cloth over her head, stood by my bedside, and let out a sudden roar at me, probably hoping to scare me to death right there. But I don't believe in ghosts or spirits, so she didn't scare me. Seeing her plan fail, she tried to run away but ended up bumping into the doorframe. It was quite amusing. I could tell she really wanted to kill me, so I gave her a chance. That night, I slept in the same bed with her. I closed my eyes, and thinking I was asleep, she decided to make her move, but she dawdled for a long time without making a move. And in the end, she gave up again, quite foolish and soft-hearted. I agree, I really don't understand why the third prince would send such a little fool to kill me, but it's true that her martial arts skills are exceptional. I know about the dealings between her and the third prince, that night's assassination. I knew the third prince would send someone, so I made some arrangements, just to let her see the true face of the third prince, but it seems the impact wasn't strong enough. So I decided to intensify the effort. At that small banquet, I deliberately brought the third prince's subordinate, Yu, into the palace and had her arrange the event. I knew the third prince would surely order her to take action. She was highly skilled in martial arts, so it was impossible to have someone monitor her at all times. I could only be cautious and replace everything she had touched. However, I didn't expect that the third prince would have Yu reveal the plan, which led to her being imprisoned. Although I wanted to save her, I wanted her to understand what kind of person the third prince was even more. It wasn't until the third day that I explained the situation to my father and brought her back. Battered and bruised, the moment I saw her curled up in the corner, my heart ached. Fortunately, she was quite resolute in this matter and never had any further contact with the third prince. At first, I just wanted to tease her. After all, the way she got annoyed was truly adorable. Later on, I wanted to treat her better and better, to make her accept my gifts. I even sent someone to tell her that everyone in the other households had received the same things. I could sense that she preferred relying on herself rather than others and disliked being restrained. I also began to feel unsatisfied with her being just a consort. I liked her, so I started finding different ways to be good to her, occasionally teasing her. My life, which had been dull for over 20 years, finally became interesting. Later still, on the night I made her the crown princess, she became pregnant. That night, I held her and barely slept. Afterward, I became aware that the third prince was plotting a rebellion, but I had no evidence. My father valued family bonds deeply, and rashly telling him might have displeased him. As she neared childbirth, I secretly stationed many of my personal guards around her. As expected, the third prince launched his rebellion that day. My father sent me to quell the uprising, and a large number of guards were concentrated to protect him. When I hurried back to the palace, I saw her sitting on the ground, drenched in sweat, with her maid sobbing so hard she was about to faint. The third prince was raising a knife, about to stab her. I raised my bow and shot an arrow at him. He didn't react in time and stumbled back several steps. To my surprise, she struggled to her feet and thrust a sword into the third prince's heart. As soon as she finished speaking, her body began to collapse. I rushed over frantically, cradling her in my arms, calling her name repeatedly. The maid told me she was going into labor. My heart tightened with anxiety, and I hastily summoned the imperial physician. She was so exhausted that she had little strength left during childbirth. I waited anxiously outside the door, but couldn't hear any movement, so I rushed in, and several people couldn't stop me. I held her hand, calling her name over and over again. She seemed to hear my voice, waking up in a daze, and finally gave birth to the child. I swore I would never let her suffer like that again. So in this lifetime, we only had this one child. Later on, the emperor passed away, and we became the new emperor and empress. The child grew up, and we grew old. The two of us sat under the setting sun. She leaned on my shoulder. I asked her, "Do you remember promising to ask me what I wanted?" She thought for a moment. Not really. I helped her recall it again, and only then did she remember. That's all ancient history, why bring it up? She said, but still asked, "So what do you want?" I just smiled. "I want to walk ahead of you." She was taken aback at first, then quickly realized what I meant by walk. She glared at me and said, "Stop talking nonsense." Much later, she still didn't manage to walk behind me. After I stepped down from my position, I retreated to a mountain forest, where I personally planted the entire field with chrysanthemums, tending to them with care until the day I died. I only hope that in the next life, I can walk ahead of her, so she can also taste the bitterness of longing.